In the late 80s, Navy, 3 words could end your life. I love her. Not figuratively. Literally, they would take everything. Discharge, shame, the end of the service I'd built my world around. Every day, I stood on that cold deck of the USS Harlan and watched Lena, a woman I shouldn't even know existed. The salt-heavy air clung thick, diesel and brine burning my throat, but the day the drill whistle pierced it, sharp as a knife, and our eyes locked across the formation, longer than protocol allowed, I was ruined. My pulse thudded against my ribs, heat rising in my chest, despite the chill wind whipping off the Pacific swells. Boots gripped the slick deck, the ship groaning like old bones beneath us. One glance, and it all hung by a thread. Those hidden looks lingered after, quick flicks, when the lieutenant barked orders, her profile cutting sharp against the gray sky. The pull low in my gut was forbidden under the Navy's iron rules. One wrong whisper, and it could unravel us both. Discovery wasn't just risk, it was ruin. As the day ended, the pull drew us closer. Life on the USS Harlan was a grind of isolation, endless days blurred into nights under fluorescent hum. We'd left port weeks ago. The world shrunk to this steel beast cutting through endless blue. Routine ruled, reveille at 050, scrubbing decks until my knuckles bled raw from the wire brushes, then watches, stacked like dominoes. The isolation pressed in. The men joked rough around the mess hall, their laughter echoing off bulkheads. But I kept to the edges, silent. No one got close. Not here. I'd joined up young, straight out of a dusty Kansas town where secrets stayed buried deep. 22, wide-eyed, chasing structure after my family fell apart. Mom gone too soon. Dad lost in his bottles. The Navy promised order, a place to hide the parts of me that didn't fit. I was guarded by nature, words locked tight behind my teeth. Flings in ports never lasted, always with women who faded like smoke. But on this ship, with 300 souls crammed tight, vulnerability felt like a loaded gun. I learned quick to blend, to laugh at the crude stories, to stare at the deck when eyes turned my way. My hands stayed busy, coiling ropes until the fibers bit into my palms, the salt sting grounding me. Anything to drown the quiet ache. Quiet hours came after the evening meal, when the engines thrummed low and the crew scattered to bunks. I lingered in the berth deck, folding my uniform with mechanical care, the coarse fabric scratching my skin. That's when Lena appeared, slipping in from her watch, her shoulders brushing the low ceiling. She didn't say much at first, just nodded, claiming the bunk across from mine. Her presence filled the space, warm against the chill draft from the vents. We shared those silences, the ship's sway, rocking us like a cradle. One night, as the lights dimmed to red glow, she passed me a tin of salve for my cracked hands. Her fingers grazed mine, rough from the same work, calluses matching my own. That touch lingered, electric in the dimness. Subtle gestures built from there. A shared thermos of coffee during midwatch, steam curling up hot and bitter, her knee brushing mine under the chart table. I'd catch her watching when I repaired a line, her eyes tracing the way sweat traced down my neck. Tension coiled tight, like a spring in my chest. I pulled back at first, heart slamming, but the glances returned, hers questioning, mine hungry. The air between us thickened, charged with what we couldn't name. Then came the inciting conversation, late one shift in the engine room's shadow. The roar of turbines drowned the world, vibrations humming through the gratings under our feet. We'd been assigned cleanup, alone for once, the heat pressing sweat to our skin. Lena wiped her brow, flannel shirt clinging damp, and said, "Lo, this place chews you up if you let it." I nodded, throat tight, stacking oily rags. She paused, voice dropping further. "Ever feel like you're hiding more than just the fatigue?" Her words hung, vulnerable, eyes searching mine. I froze, the hum fading to my own pulse. "Every day," I admitted, voice barely above the din. She stepped closer, the scent of her, sweat and sea salt, mixing with the oil. Me too, not the job, the rest. It cracked something open, that shared fracture, her hand steady on a pipe as if anchoring us both. Fear hit hard after. Military consequences loomed like storm clouds, Don't ask, don't tell wasn't even policy yet. Just the unspoken blade. Whispers could lead to investigations, psych evals, expulsion. I'd seen it before. A woman from my training group vanished after a rumor, her bunk stripped bare overnight. Lena and I parted that night with nods, but the weight settled deep, a stone in my gut. One slip, and we'd lose it all. The service, our covers, each other before we even began. That night, the air shifted with unspoken possibility. Stolen moments during watches became our fragile thread. The bridge was a dim-lit world of gauges and shadows. The horizon a black smear under stars that felt too far. I'd take the midnight shift, scanning radar sweeps, the green glow flickering on my face. Lena rotated in sometimes, her relief overlapping mine by 10 minutes, enough time for words that weren't orders. We'd stand shoulder to shoulder at the console, the ship's roll sinking our breaths. Her arm would brush mine as she adjusted a dial, fabric rasping soft against my sleeve. I savored those contacts, brief as they were, the warmth seeping through wool like a secret shared. Sensory exchanges wove in deeper. One fog-shrouded night, the deck chill seeped into my bones, wind cutting sharp. Lena appeared with an extra blanket from stores, draping it over my shoulders without a word. Her hands lingered on the wool, calluses rough against my neck as she tucked it close. The shared warmth built slow, her body heat mingling with mine under the cover, close enough to smell the faint soap on her skin cutting through the brine. My skin prickled, not from cold, but from the nearness, the way her breath fogged the air between us, steady and warm. It was more than comfort. It was a claim, silent and bold in the gray. Internal reflections on my identity surfaced in those hours, unbidden. Lying in my bunk after, the hammock swaying, I'd trace the lines of the day in my mind. Who was I here, stripped to this uniform, this role? Back home, I'd buried it all. The girls in high school whose laughs pulled me in, the confusion that twisted my gut at family dinners. The Navy amplified it, a mirror to the parts I hid. Lena's presence cracked that facade. I wondered if she saw me. Really saw, beyond the sailor scrubbing rust or standing at attention. Did she feel the same fracture? The want that didn't fit the code? My thoughts clouded, heavy with the risk of naming it. Yet, in her glances, I glimpsed a mirror, guarded, but alive with the same quiet fire. The male-dominated environment pressed constant, a weight we navigated like minefields. The crew was mostly men, their banter filling the air thick as smoke, stories of shore-leave conquests, eyes lingering too long on any woman who passed. I'd hear the whistles when Lena walked the mess, low catcalls masked as jokes. It grated, that entitlement, making the ship feel smaller, tighter. We learned to deflect, to laugh sharp and move on, but it wore thin. Once during a drill, a chief grabbed my arm too rough, barking corrections. Lena was there, her voice cutting and calm, redirecting him to the line. Her eyes met mine after. A flicker of solidarity. In that world of rough hands and louder voices, we carved space for each other. Invisible, but real. Small acts of support dotted our duties, threading empathy through the routine. During galley cleanup, grease slick on the counters, she'd slide me a rag when mine frayed, her fingers pressing it into my palm with a squeeze. Or in the laundry, steam heavy and hot, she'd take the heavier loads from me without asking, muscles straining under her shirt. I returned it, passing her water during a long haul on deck, the bottle cool against her heated skin, or covering for her when fatigue slowed her steps, murmuring excuses to the watch. These weren't grand, they were lifelines, quiet proofs we saw the strain in each other. Her empathy grew on me, softening the edges of my guard. She'd listen when I vented about a bad eval, her nod steady, no judgment. In return, I held space for her silences, the ones that spoke of homes left behind, loves unspoken. Growing empathy bloomed into hidden hope, fragile as sea foam. We'd linger after shifts, backs against bulkheads, sharing fragments. Ever miss the open road? She'd ask, voice low, evoking drives through fields I'd never taken with her. I'd nod, picturing it, wind in our hair, no ranks, no eyes watching. Hope flickered then, a light in the dim. It wasn't just survival, it was possibility. The dream of hands held without fear. But we kept it buried, whispers only. The ship's hum, our confidant. That hope pulled me through the drudgery, a secret pulse matching the engines below. But duty calls, pulling them into riskier territory. We tried to meet privately on deck one evening, after the sun dipped low, and the crew settled into evening routines. The forecastle was empty then, forward of the anchors, where the bow cut the waves and the wind howled free. I'd signaled her with a nod during chow, quick as a shadow, my fork scraping the tray louder than needed. Heart thudding, I slipped out. Boots quiet on the grating. The air up there bit cold. Salt spray stinging my face. The ship pitching gentle under the stars. Lena arrived minutes later, her silhouette sharp against the foam. We stood apart at first, hands on the rail, pretending to scan the horizon. Then she stepped closer, her shoulder brushing mine. Solid in the dark. Needed this, she murmured, voice lost in the rush of water. My skin warmed where we touched, the forbidden nearness pulling tight in my chest. For a moment, it worked. Just us, breaths sinking with the swell. But the interruption came swift, a superior suspicion slicing through. Footsteps echoed from the companionway, heavy and deliberate. It was Chief Harlan, his flashlight beam, cutting the night like a blade. "Who's there?" he barked, voice gravel over the wind. We froze, springing apart, my back slamming against the bulkhead. Lena turned to the rail, casual as if checking knots, but her hands gripped white-knuckled. I muttered something about clearing lines, throat dry as dust. The chief's eyes narrowed, sweeping the light over us, lingering too long on our flushed faces. No loitering forward after taps, regulations. His tone dripped doubt, the kind that lingered in reports. He didn't move right away, just stood there, the beam dancing on the deck. Sweat prickled my neck despite the chill. Finally he grunted and retreated, but the damage hung thick. We exchanged a glance, hers wide, mine panicked, before scattering to our posts. Emotional fallout hit like a rogue wave, leaving us guarded and distant. The next day dragged heavy, drills blurring into a haze. Lena avoided my eyes in the mess, her tray clattering as she sat across the table with the others. I felt it sharp, that pullback, like a door slamming in my face. My chest ached, a hollow throb, every glance from her now laced with caution. We passed in corridors, shoulders brushing accidental, but no words, no warmth. The ship's hum mocked me, endless and indifferent. Nights in the berth, I'd stare at the bunk above, replaying the chief's stare, the risk we'd danced too close to. Guilt twisted in. Had I let her there? Her silence screamed louder than shouts, building walls higher than before. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap with a touch, but fear clamped my hands still. Distance became our shield. Cold and necessary, I attempted to suppress the feelings, bearing them under duty's weight. Extra watches, volunteering for the grimiest jobs, scrubbing bilges until the stench clung to my skin, oil black under my nails. I'd focus on the burn in my arms, the scrape of brush on rust, anything to drown the ache. In my bunk, I'd clench my fists, whispering to myself that it was nothing, just ship fever, the isolation playing tricks. Lena faded to background noise in my mind, her laugh in the galley a distant echo I ignored, but suppression cracked at edges. During a quiet moment polishing brass, my thoughts drifted to her hands on the rail, rough and sure. Heat flushed my face, unbidden, and I'd scrub harder, metal gleaming under my fury. The Navy's code echoed in my head, loyalty to unit, not to whims. I told myself it was survival, pushing her memory down like a hatch in a storm. Yet sleep evaded, the sway of the ship rocking unrest into dreams, where her eyes met mine, unafraid. Failure deepened the isolation, wrapping me tighter in solitude. The suppression didn't stick, it festered, turning small things sharp. A shared glance in formation now twisted my gut with longing and dread. The crew's banter grated worse, their easy camaraderie a reminder of what I couldn't have. I'd eat alone at the end of the bench, fork pushing peas untouched, the salt taste bitter on my tongue. Lena mirrored it, her posture rigid, conversations clipped. We became ghosts to each other, haunting the same decks but worlds apart. The ship's confines amplified it. The hum of engines, a constant drone mirroring my inner roar. Isolation crept into bones, making the steel walls feel closer, the air thinner. I'd catch myself staring at the porthole, sea endless and uncaring, wondering if she'd felt this pull too, or if I'd imagined it all. The failure stung, a quiet unraveling, leaving me adrift in my own skin. Revelation came through whispers, pieced in fragments during unavoidable overlaps. It started in the laundry, steam thick and hot, our shifts colliding by chance. I was folding sheets, the cotton warm and heavy when she entered, arms full of uniforms. No words at first, just the slap of fabric on tables. Then, lo, she said, "That night, I couldn't stop thinking." Her voice trembled, slight, eyes on her hands. I paused, heart slamming. Me neither. The dam cracked then, whispers flowing like tide. She spoke of her past, growing up in a fishing town on the Maine coast, waves crashing eternal, hiding crushes on girls who smelled of salt and fish. First time I kissed one behind the cannery, heart pounding like a storm. Her words painted it vivid, the fear of family eyes, the thrill cutting sharp. I shared mine in return, voice hushed over the hum of dryers, Kansas fields flat and unforgiving, stolen moments in haylofts with a neighbor girl, the guilt twisting like barbed wire. Felt wrong but right, I admitted, fingers tracing a seam. Her nod was slow, eyes meeting mine, brief, a bridge in the heat. We traded histories like contraband, losses, longings, the ache of fitting square into round holes. It wasn't everything, but enough to soften the edges, whispers weaving us back, fragile as thread. The pressure builds, forcing a bold choice. Patrols ramped up after that whisper session in the laundry, the ship tightening like a noose. The brass caught wind of loose talk somewhere, maybe the chief's report from the deck, or just the usual paranoia in these waters. Extra sweeps now, boots echoing through corridors at odd hours, flashlights probing shadows where none should be. I'd hear them coming, the thud of heels on grating, and my heart would slam, palms slick against the bulkhead. Every corner felt watched, the hum of the engines now a cover for imagined footsteps. Lena and I exchanged looks in passing, quick, coded, her eyes wide with the same edge. Paranoia seeped in, turning the steel confines into a cage. I'd lie awake, the sway rocking me, counting breaths until dawn, wondering if a door creak meant eyes on us. It heightened everything, made the air thick with what-ifs. One wrong step, and the whispers we'd shared could echo back as accusations. We started with notes then, scraps of paper passed like contraband. It began simple, a folded square in my pocket during a tool handoff in the workshop, her fingers brushing mine, deliberate under the workbench. I unfolded it later in the head, the dim bulb flickering yellow, words scrawled in pencil. Thinking of the warmth, last watch. Hold steady. My chest tightened, the paper crinkling soft in my grip, ink smudged from her hurried hand. I burned it later, watching the ash curl in the sink, but the words stuck, a spark in the gray. I replied the next day, slipping mine into her locker during a shift change, tucked under a spare sock, the fabric rough against my skin. Your voice cuts through the noise. Me too. We kept them short, coded, no names, just fragments that built on the whispers. One came during a rough sea, the ship pitching hard. This storm feels like us, wild but together. Reading it, I pressed it to my chest, the salt-damp paper cool, her longing bleeding through the lines. It was risky, these exchanges, but they bridged the distance patrols enforced, a thread pulling us through the suspicion. Fear twisted physical, a knot low in my gut that wouldn't loosen, mingling with longing sharp as a hook. During drills, sweat would bead cold on my neck, not from effort but the brush of her arm in formation, accidental yet electric. My skin prickled then, heat flushing despite the chill spray off the waves, pulse thudding in my ears louder than the bosun's whistle. Longing hit in waves, too. Nights alone, I'd trace the callus on my thumb where her hand had pressed. The memory, rough and warm, stirring ache deep in my core. Fear clamped it down, breath shallow when patrols passed. My hands shaking as I gripped a rail, knuckles white. It was a tangle that push-pull, want her close, dread the cost. In the berth, the thin blanket chafed my skin, body tense with unspent energy, her bunk just feet away but worlds off limits. The sensations layered, fear's chill sweat mixing with longing's flush, leaving me raw, every nerve alive to her nearness. Daily discipline clashed hard against it all, the routine a grind that demanded focus we couldn't spare. Mornings started with inspections, standing at attention while the lieutenant paced, his eyes sharp on uniforms pressed crisp. I'd catch myself drifting, mind on a note hidden in my boot, and snap back, boots shifting on the deck. Lena faltered too. Once, during a line-handling drill, her hands fumbled a knot, rope slipping through fingers distracted. The chief barked correction, voice booming, and she flushed red, tying it tight after. It pulled at us, that conflict, duty's iron grip versus the pull underneath. Even meals turned battleground. Sitting across the mess, trays clattering, I'd avoid her eyes, fork scraping tin, but feel her presence like heat off an engine. Discipline meant blending, laughing at the men's jokes, but inside, it warred with the truth, bubbling up. One evening watch, scanning the radar's green sweep, my mind wandered to her touch, and I missed a blip. Nothing major, but enough to jolt me, hands gripping the console until plastic bit in. The Navy's code demanded everything. Our secret chipped at it, leaving cracks that discipline couldn't seal. Crew gossip threw an unexpected wrench, whispers spreading like oil on water. It started vague, talk in the galley about close pairs on night watches, laced with smirks over coffee mugs, steaming hot. I overheard it first, leaning against a bulkhead. The words, slicing low. Saw Harlan eyeing those two up front, something off. My stomach dropped, the tin cup in my hand suddenly heavy, coffee bitter on my tongue. Was it us? The chief's suspicion from the deck, twisted into rumor? Lena heard it too, her face paling when I murmured it during a quick pass in the corridor, her hand clenching brief on my elbow. Gossip festered, men clustering in corners, voices dropping when we entered, eyes flicking our way. It complicated everything. Notes felt bolder now, riskier, every exchange shadowed by potential ears. One night, a sailor cornered me in the head, casual but probing. "You and Ramirez seem tight. Watch it." His grin didn't reach his eyes, the mirror fogged behind him. I shrugged it off, heart pounding, but it lingered, turning allies suspect. The complication isolated us further, the crew's chatter a web tightening, forcing our steps careful, glances rarer. My struggle with authenticity gnawed deeper, a rift widening inside. Hiding felt like lying to my bones. The notes, the glances, all half-truths in a life built on full ones. I'd stare at my reflection in the polished brass, eyes hollow, wondering who stared back, the sailor who saluted crisp, or the woman craving Lena's hand in hers, open under sun. Back home, I'd buried it easy, fields hiding secrets, but here, crammed tight, authenticity clawed out. During a quiet moment, splicing rope on deck, fibers rough under my nails, I'd pause, the sea's vastness mocking my small cage. Did I want this half-life, discipline over desire? Lena's notes urged truth, be real with me. But the cost loomed, discharge a shadow, shame a brand. It tore at me, authenticity a pull against the uniform's starch, leaving me adrift between who I was and who I pretended. Nights, the bunk's sway mirrored my turmoil, body tense, mind racing with what-ifs. Struggle, built pressure. Authenticity no longer abstract but urgent, demanding I choose. In the midst of chaos, courage emerges. The major mission dropped on us like a depth charge, ratcheting stakes to breaking point. Intelligence buzzed through the comms. Soviet subs prowling our patrol zone. Cold War shadows lengthening in the Pacific. The Harlan shifted to high alert, engines thrumming deeper, the deck vibrating underfoot with urgent power. Drills turned real. Anti-submarine exercises, sonar pings echoing sharp through the hull like accusations. We ran them nonstop, sweat soaking our fatigues, the air thick with tension and the tang of fierce sweat. Lena and I were paired on a damage control team, stationed side by side in the bowels, where pipes hissed steam and bulkheads groaned. Every order snapped taut. The captain's voice over the intercom, clipped and iron. Discovery risk, spiked. Fatigue frayed edges, made slips inevitable. One wrong word in the chaos, and our notes, our glances, could surface like wreckage. The mission stretched days into a blur, sleep snatched in catnaps, the sea turning hostile mirror to our hidden storm. Stakes weren't just the enemy below, they were us, exposed in the pressure. We made a risky decision to protect each other, forged in a stolen breath between stations. During a brief lull in the auxiliary room, fluorescent buzz overhead casting harsh shadows, Lena pulled me behind a console stack. Her hand clamped my wrist, grip firm, calluses pressing into my skin like a vow. "If it goes south out there," she whispered, breath hot against my ear, eyes fierce in the dim. "We cover, no questions." I nodded, throat tight, the decision settling heavy in my chest. A pact born of the mission's edge. It meant watching her back closer than protocol, intercepting any probing eyes, sharing intel on patrols that skirted rules. Risky, yes. Our protection could draw the very suspicion we fled. But in that moment, with the ship shuddering from a practiced depth charge, it felt right. Her thumb brushed my pulse point, quick and grounding, before she slipped away. We moved through shifts like that, shadows for each other. I'd reroute a crewman from her path with a fabricated order, voice steady despite the knot in my gut. She'd slip me a ration bar during a long station, her fingers lingering brief, warm through the wrapper. Protection wove tighter, our bond a shield in the frenzy, but each act chipped at the wall between duty and us. Internal debate raged on revealing feelings, a storm in my head matching the swells outside. Pacing my bunk in off hours, the hammock creaking under my weight, I'd weigh it out, tell her everything, let the words spill like oil from a ruptured line, or bury deeper. The mission amplified it. Death loomed from torpedoes, making silence feel like cowardice. What if we didn't make it through? Her nearness tortured, every shared glance a question. Does she know the depth, the want, twisting me nights? I'd clench the thin blanket, fabric rough against my palms, imagining her response. Rejection in the face of regs, or the same fire mirrored back. Doubt clawed. Revealing could shatter our cover, invite the psych boards, the discharge papers stamped in triplicate. Yet hiding gnawed worse. Authenticity, a ghost, haunting my steps. During a quiet scan of the sonar, green blips flickering, my mind replayed her touch, the debate looping. Say it now, in this thin air, or let the sea claim unspoken truths. Heart thudded erratic, sweat beating cold on my forehead, the console's hum mocking my indecision. Lena's eyes met mine across the room once, questioning, and I looked away, the weight pressing heavier. Debate turned torment, revelation, a ledge I teetered on, missions, chaos, the wind at my back. Sensory details of the storm assaulted us mid-mission, a battle of elements mirroring the one inside. It hit sudden, typhoon-force winds howling over the waves, rain lashing the bridge like shrapnel. The Harlan pitched wild, deck tilting at angles that slammed us against rails, salt spray stinging eyes and skin raw. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning fracturing the black sky, illuminating Lena's face, slick and determined as we braced in the CIC. Alarms wailed shrill, mixing with the groan of straining hull, vibrations shuddering through boots into bones. Sweat mixed with seawater, clothes clinging heavy and cold, my hands numb, gripping the damage report clipboard, ink running blurry. The air reeked of ozone and wet metal, breaths coming short against the roar. In the storm's belly, sonar lost the subcontacts, forcing us blind, every creak a potential hit, hearts slamming with the waves. Lena's arm steadied me once, brief press of her shoulder solid amid the chaos, warmth cutting the chill like a lifeline. Battle sensations layered, The jolt of a rogue wave heaving us, bile rising sharp in my throat, fear's metallic taste on my tongue. It was visceral, the storm's fury stripping pretenses, leaving only raw survival and the pull between us. Failure in maintaining secrecy cracked open then, a slip born of the gale's madness. During the height, as we scrambled to secure hatches below decks, water flooding corridors, ankle deep and icy, I grabbed Lena's arm to pull her from a slipping grate. "Careful," I hissed, too loud over the din, my hand lingering if I beat too long, fingers curling instinctive around her bicep. A passing ensign saw, her eyes widening in the red emergency lights, water sloshing around our boots. She didn't say a word, just nodded and moved on. But the glance burned, suspicion flickering like the storm's lightning. Word spread subtle after, murmurs in the drying mess hall, eyes on us sharper during debrief. One of our notes surfaced too, mine, dropped in the head during a hurried break. The paper sodden, but legible when a swab found it, passing it up the chain with a frown. Chief Harlan pulled me aside later, voice low in the passageway. "Keep it clean, sailor. No distractions." His stare drilled, implying more than the storm. Secrecy frayed at seams, failure a cold drip down my spine, exposing cracks we'd patched hasty. Turning point set up through doubt bloomed in the aftermath, shadows lengthening in my mind. As the storm eased, ship steadying to a weary roll, doubt infested everything. Had that grab doomed us? Lena's face in the berth, pale under the fluorescence, mirrored my turmoil, her bunk a chasm away. I replayed it. The ensign's look, the notes loss, our protections now liabilities. Was it worth it? This pull risking all? Nights blurred, sleep shallow. The sway rocking questions, pull back or push forward into the raw. Doubt coiled tight, a serpent in my gut, setting the stage for whatever broke next. Confession or collapse. The mission dragged on, subs evading, but inside, the real battle turned inward. Doubt, the blade hovering. The moment arrives, raw and unyielding. The critical situation erupted without warning, a real threat ripping through the fragile calm we'd scraped together after the storm. Sonar lit up frantic. Actual Soviet subcontacts closing fast. No drill this time. The pings sharp and insistent through the hull. Alarms blared red hot, klaxons wailing like banshees, jolting us from bunks into chaos. The Harlan surged to battle stations, corridors flooding with boots slamming grating, voices barking orders over the din. I scrambled to my post in the CIC, heart pounding wild against my ribs, sweat already slicking my palms despite the chill draft from vents. Lena was there too, assigned to the same team, her face set hard in the flashing lights, eyes scanning consoles with that steady focus I'd come to crave. But this was no exercise. Torpedoes could strike any second, the sea turning predator beneath us. Depth charges prepped in the magazine, the ship shuddering as we evaded, every jolt slamming through my bones like a warning. Fear clawed raw, not just the enemy, but the exposure, our secrets laid bare in the frenzy. One hit, and everything ended. Whispered histories lost to the deep. Her bold intervention came first, cutting through the panic like a lifeline tossed into the black. A power surge hit mid-maneuver, lights flickering, consoles glitching in sparks that bit the air with ozone tang. I was at the plotting table, fingers fumbling. Markers, when a loose panel sparked near Lena's station, wires exposed, threatening to short the whole array. She lunged without hesitation, shoving past a rating, her body slamming into the bulkhead with a thud that echoed my own pulse. "Get back!" she shouted, voice cracking sharp over the alarms. Hands ripping at the panel, calluses tearing on jagged metal, blood welled quick, dark streaks on her skin, but she yanked the wires free, twisting them barehanded, muscles straining under her shirt. The console stabilized, lights steadying green, but the cost showed. Her palm gashed deep, breath coming ragged. The lieutenant nodded grim, no time for thanks, but her eyes met mine across the room, fierce and unyielding. That act, in the heart of danger, wasn't just duty. It was for us, shielding what we'd built, her courage a flare in the dark. Confession spilled amid the danger, words forced out as another evasion rocked us hard. We dropped low behind the table during the roll, the ship groaning, depth charges booming distant like thunder in water. My hand found hers in the shadows. Instinctive, fingers interlocking, slick with sweat and her blood, warm and sticky between us. The world narrowed to that grip, alarms fading to a hum. "Lena!" I gasped, voice breaking low, the confession clawing up my throat. "I can't do this halfway anymore. It's you. Has been since that first glance on deck. I love you in this mess, despite it all." The words hung raw, exposed as the wires she'd fixed, my chest heaving, fear and want twisting tight. She squeezed back, her breath hot on my neck, body pressed close against the tilt. The danger amplified it, torpedoes circling unseen, but in that crouch, it was just us, the steel world, shrinking. Her eyes locked on mine, wide in the red glow, no pulling away. The shared "me too" revelation hit like a wave breaking, simple and shattering. She leaned in, forehead to mine, the scent of her, sweat, blood, salt, filling my lungs. "Me too," she whispered, voice steady despite the tremor, the words a key turning in a lock I'd thought rusted shut. From the start, those glances. Thought I was alone in it. Her free hand cupped my jaw, thumb rough tracing my cheek, grounding the surge. It wasn't grand. It was real. Forged in the peril, her admission mirroring mine, doubling the weight and the light. Tears stung my eyes, hot against the chill, as the truth settled. Mutual, undeniable. No more doubt, just the raw sync of our breaths, her pulse thudding against my wrist. In that moment, amid the blaring alerts and shuddering hull, we were seen, validated in the forbidden. Emotional release washed through then, a flood cracking the dam I'd built so high. My body sagged against hers, sobs caught silent in my throat, the tension uncoiling like rope slipping free. Validation bloomed warm in my chest, her "me too" a balm on the years of hiding, Kansas silences, shipboard guards, all easing in her hold. We clung there, brief as the evasion allowed, her blood smearing my skin, a mark of our shared risk. It felt like coming home, the ache of longing met with her solidity, fear receding just enough for hope to flicker. The alarms wailed on, but inside, release, hummed quiet. A peace I'd chased in whispers and notes now real, her presence the anchor. Immediate consequences unfolded swift, the aftermath crashing in as the sub-contacts faded, evaded, but close. The lieutenant pulled us up sharp, eyes narrowing on our linked hands before we broke apart. Flushed and marked. Whispers started immediate. Ratings glancing, the ensign from the storm now staring outright, her report likely brewing. Chief Harlan loomed in the hatch, his gaze drilling, the intervention noted but twisted in suspicion. Lena's hand wrapped hasty in gauze, blood seeping through, but the real wound was exposure, our confession a beacon in the dim. Debrief came tense, questions probing too deep, the air thick with unspoken accusations. We stood separate, but changed, the bond sealed yet fragile under scrutiny. Discharge loomed closer, a shadow lengthening, but in her quick glance across the room, I saw resolve mirroring mine. Aftermath settles, bittersweet clarity dawns. Navigating the fallout together started in the quiet after the debrief, the ship's hum returning to its steady drone as the sub-threat receded. We met in stolen corners, the head during off hours, water dripping steady from a faucet like our unspoken fears. Lena's hand, bandaged thick, brushed mine under the sink basin, the gauze rough against my knuckles. "We ride it out," she murmured, voice low, eyes tracing the tiled cracks. Whispers of investigation circled. The ensign's report filed, Chief Harlan's notes stacking, but we pieced a plan, simple as shared shifts. I'd cover her logs if questions came, voice steady in simulations we'd run in our heads. She nodded, her thumb pressing my palm brief, a seal in the damp air. Together we deflected. Laughs, forced in the mess, eyes averted in drills, but under it, our glances held code, steady, unbreaking. The scrutiny pressed, a weight on our chests, but sharing it lightened the load, her presence a counter to the isolation creeping back. We'd pass in corridors, shoulders aligning accidental, the brief sink grounding us amid the stairs. Fallout wasn't easy. It chafed like salt in a wound, but navigating side by side turned dread to resolve, our bond the rudder steering through. Quiet moments of connection bloomed in those cracks, fragile respites amid the routine's grind. One evening in the laundry, steam curling thick from the dryers, we folded side by side, the heat loosening our guards. Her fingers tangled in a sheet, and mine caught them, holding a beat too long, the cotton warm between us. No words needed. The press spoke volumes, her calluses familiar now, tracing patterns on my skin, or during a calm watch on the fantail, stars pricking the black sky, wind soft for once. We'd lean on the rail, breaths fogging in tandem, her shoulder against mine solid, the sea's murmur, our cover, and "Feels real here," she'd say, voice barely rising above the lap of waves, and I'd nod, head tilting to rest, brief on her arm, the wool of her jacket scratching my cheek. These connections weren't bold, they were breaths stolen from the machine, her warmth seeping through layers, easing the knot in my gut. In the berth, it lights out, bunks aligned. I'd feel her presence across the gap, the sway syncing our heartbeats, a silent thread pulling through the night. Quiet built us stronger, each touch a affirmation, the ship's confines no longer just cage, but cocoon. Broader reflections on service and love surfaced in those lulls, weaving through my thoughts like tide lines on sand. The Navy had given structure, a hull to contain my chaos, but love, Lena's quiet fire, challenged its rigid lines. Lying awake, the engines thrumming below like a distant pulse, I'd ponder it. Service demanded sacrifice, ranks blurring identities into uniforms, but love carved truth from the gray. We'd traded stories deeper now, her Maine coasts crashing wild, matching my Kansas plains stretching empty, both places hiding the same longings. "This job takes pieces," she'd whisper during a gear check, tools clinking soft, "but you give back whole." It rang true. The drills forging discipline, but our glances forging something deeper, a love that didn't salute but endured. Reflections turned the service from prison to paradox, the brotherhood real in its roughness, yet excluding us, forcing love into shadows. But in those shadows it thrived, raw and unpolished, teaching me love wasn't conquest, but quiet holding. Service's loyalty mirrored in our pact. The contrast sharpened everything. The men's easy bonds grating now, but ours purer, earned in risk. Love reframed the uniform, not as chain but canvas, our strokes hidden but vivid. Acceptance of ongoing risks settled slow, a grit in the gears we learned to oil. Patrols still prowled, gossip simmered in corners, the threat of discharge a constant undertow pulling at our steps. We'd acknowledge it head-on during a rope coil on deck, fibers biting our palms. If they come, we face it square. Her eyes would meet mine, steady over the salt spray, no illusions. Risks weren't abstract anymore. The notes ash, the ensign's stare. But woven in, accepted like the ship's roll. I felt it in my bones. The tension of watching backs. Words measured, but acceptance freed something, turning fear to fuel. We'd laugh dry at the absurdity, her elbow nudging mine in passing. Worth the watch. It was. The pull stronger than policy, risks a price for the warmth in her glance. Ongoing, yes, but ours to shoulder, the acceptance a quiet rebellion, binding us tighter in the face of it. Personal growth through the bond unfolded gradual, reshaping me from the inside out. Before Lena, I'd been a shadow sailor, guarded tight. Emotions coiled like spare line, but her me too cracked that shell, letting light in. Vulnerability, no longer weakness, but bridge. I'd catch myself standing taller in formation, voice firmer in reports, the confidence bleeding from our shared secret. Reflections in the mirror showed it. Eyes brighter, jaw less clenched, the woman beneath surfacing. Through her I claimed pieces long buried, the ache for touch, the need for truth. Growth blooming in small ways, like holding her gaze longer, fear yielding to fire. The bond taught empathy deeper, seeing her strains as mine, fostering patience I'd lacked. Even in fallout, growth pushed, learning to navigate not just for self, but us, turning isolation to interdependence. It was transformative. The love, a mirror showing strength I didn't know. Personal edges softening into shared resolve. Fading intensity marked the deployment's end, the horizon shifting from endless blue to port lights winking distant. Weeks blurred after the climax, routine reclaiming us, but the fire simmered lower, tempered by time and caution. Stolen touches grew rarer, replaced by knowing smiles across the mess, the urgency easing into steady warmth. As land neared, the ship's pace quickened, crew buzzing with shore leave dreams, but hours carried weight, separation looming, lives pulling apart. In quiet hours, her hand would find mine, brief under a table, the press lingering, but the pull softened, nostalgia tinting the edges. Intensity faded not to loss, but to foundation, the bond etched deep, ready for whatever came beyond the bulkheads. The gangway clanged under our boots as we parted on the dock, her silhouette blurring in the fog rolling off the harbor. One last glance over her shoulder, eyes holding mine, fierce and soft. The salt air thick between us. That shared secret, whispered through steel and storms, lingered like the ache in my chest. Bittersweet, a warmth against the chill of goodbye. If this story stirred something in you, hit subscribe to Sapphic Legacy for more tales of hidden loves and quiet strengths. Drop in the comments, what's your memory of a Me Too moment that changed everything? Your stories build this community. Let's hear them.